right, everybody, welcome to episode 19 of the Comedically Hardheaded podcast. So, where we left off in the Italy series, we had relocated from the United States to Vicenza, Italy when I was in 3rd grade. And to be honest, I did not like it. Actually, I low-key hated it initially coming in. I didn't like the school. The teacher I had was just straight terrible, Mr. Robert Shaw. I talked about that in that episode, so please go back just to understand the experience and the plight of being in that classroom every day. So I didn't like the school. The food I wasn't crazy over. There was no Nickelodeon, you know what I mean? The radio was limited. The TV, there was one channel to watch. There were only so many kids you could play with. And then when you did make a new friend, they were moving back to the United States, or their parents were getting stationed in Germany or Japan or somewhere else. And so Italy was such a weird contrast. Going from the United States, a place where you just felt like you had free reign to go anywhere and you didn't feel limited, to going to a military base in a small northern town in Italy, where pretty much as long as you're on a military base, you feel like you're in America because it's gated, everybody speaks English. Everything that you would normally see in the United States is in that base, but the minute you step outside of the base, you're in the world of Italy, and it's a totally different planet. And so it feels like your world just gets smaller. It feels like you're limited and you're gated in. And even though you go and you branch out and you go into the actual areas outside of the military base, it's like a foreign planet, especially because you don't speak the language, especially because you don't understand the culture, especially because you even look different. You know, let's be honest, Italy is a European country, so when you're talking about the demographics of who live there, it's a totally different ball game when you step outside of the base and you're the only person that looks like yourself in public spaces, and you get a few stares on occasion. So it was interesting. But one of the funnier moments, I think, that come from that 4th grade year was that it's around the time I start to recognize that, okay, you know what? I love my parents, but I'm starting to see that, you know what? They're actually pretty human, and they do things that humans do that sometimes don't make sense. And so one of the funniest stories I can remember from being in 4th grade was my father got a root canal. And when he got the root canal, it pretty much made his mouth swell up. You know, he wasn't really able to talk or open his mouth, and so his mouth was just swollen for a good day and a half. And now my mom was really petty, because at this point, my dad could only really eat through a straw, so he had to get, like, you know, chicken broth and really, you know, watered down soups with literally nothing in it. And my mom was being petty because she was mad at my dad because he messed up one of her gowns. Like, he was supposed to put the gown in the cleaners, but he wasn't paying attention, and he put it in the washing machine with everything else, and the dress got ruined. So she was already mad at him. So she made his favorite meal that day. She made like this red beans and rice dish with, I think, cornbread on the side or something like that. And so, you know, we're eating dinner. Me, my brother, because Marcus at this point is about 2.5, maybe 3. I was about 9. And so me, my mother, and my brother, we're eating. Man, this is good, Mom. This is the best one you ever made. And so we're over here just stuffing our faces, eating. And my dad's over here pissed off with his little bowl of soup with nothing in it, sipping out of that straw. And my mom's being petty. But baby, how's your soup? You enjoying? And so he looks at her. He gets up, he goes in the kitchen, and pretty much my dad is like, the hell with this. So he goes, he fixes him a bowl of the rice and beans, but he tries to cut it up with like a knife and try to mash it down and make it smaller so it can fit through the straw. And my mom was like, I know you don't think you're about to eat that. The dentist already said, drink through a straw. If it can't fit through the straw, you don't need to eat it. And my dad couldn't argue back because he couldn't talk, so he's just grumbling. And so he goes, and he gets a big old bowl full of the rice and beans. A big old, because listen, my dad was a big man, so he always had huge helpings of everything. And so we're sitting here watching him try to eat this thing. My mom was like, if you start choking, I swear, you just gonna choke, because the dentist already told you not to do that. And so he starts trying to sip the rice and beans through the straw. And so he was doing fine like the first minute and a half. And out of nowhere, he must have sucked too hard through the straw, and one of them grains of rice went straight in the back of his throat. And so he was trying to cough it out, but he couldn't cough it out because he couldn't open his mouth to cough. So we're at the table. Marcus is sitting there. I'm eating my food. Next thing you hear is, and like, my mom was like, see, I told you not to eat that stuff. Now I gotta sit there. How am I supposed to do the Heimlich? And so my mom, she didn't do the Heimlich on him because he was able to somehow cough it out. But yo, that was crazy. And when I was watching, I was like, okay, you know what? My parents really don't have it all upstairs. Okay, so you know what? Okay, I see that my parents are human. I see that sometimes they may not always be right. And it was funny because, listen, when my dad started choking on the rice, his eyes were red, he had a tear coming down, and then my mom was trying to get him to drink the water at the same time, but he couldn't drink the water because he was so busy coughing, and so he couldn't really try or tell his body to stop coughing and try to just give him a second to get the water down. It was a mess. And the worst part is Marcus is just sitting there laughing. He thought it was the funniest thing ever. And I'm like, Lord, trying to kill my daddy, Lord. This is a time period where I myself also got caught up in a bunch of foolishness because I made a lot of really stupid choices around this time period. And so one of the hobbies my mom picked up at that time was baking. Like I said before, the military base was really small, so you could get bored easily, especially if you weren't, like, as a child, you were okay, because, you had a playground, there were still kids to play with, but adults, there wasn't that much for adults to do. And, you could go to Rome and Florence and Naples and all that, but it wasn't close to where we lived. Like, Vicenza was in northern Italy, like, right around the Alps. And so Rome was 5 hours away driving. I think Florence was 2 or 3 hours away. Naples was nowhere near us. The only areas close to Vicenza were, like, Milan, Venice, Verona, and so you had to find things to do to kind of stay sane, especially as adults. Teenagers were really miserable over there. Like, there was nothing for them to do. They had like a teen center, but a lot of teenagers over there got caught up into, they got in a lot of trouble doing things because there was just nothing to do. So my mom picked up baking, and she used to bake cakes for people, and people would, purchase them. So she would bake cakes for events and birthday parties and everything. And my mom would make everything from scratch. I mean, she would make the frosting from scratch. She would make the cake batter from scratch. She would decorate the cakes, and she had all these little tools and gadgets that could make the cakes look all fancy. Like, she could have been on like some Cake Boss back in the day. And so one of the things I used to always like to do, of course, when she made the frosting or the cake batter, I always wanted to lick the spoon, or I always wanted to, dip my fingers in the frosting and eat it. And so one of these times, like, I used to always get in trouble because every now and then she would finish the cake, and the cake would be ready, and she'd have it in a nice little container ready for the person to come pick it up. And I would always open the container, get my little finger, dip on the frosting, just get a little, okay, that was good, okay, and then put it back. And so one time I got caught doing it, and my mom was like, don't ever do that again. Like, you do that again, it's gonna be you and I. And so I had to kind of be like more careful. And so my mother, I would always make sure they were not around when I would go and like dip my fingers on the different cakes that she was making. And so one day my mom noticed, like, she saw a fingerprint like right in the middle of the cake. It wasn't like a big gash where I just did a dip. It was like you just lightly touched the surface where it had just enough frosting to get on your fingertip, and then you go your merry way. But she noticed it, and she was like, Michael, I'm not gonna tell you again. If I look and I see one more little fingerprint, because I know it's not Marcus, because Marcus can't reach this part of the table. It's only you, and your father's fingers are too big, and he's not that greedy. If I see another fingerprint on this cake that you didn't touch, because now I got to cut that piece off and do it, because I don't want people getting your germs, because you don't be washing your hands, and I don't know what your little kids be doing in school. Listen, I better not see that happen again. It better not happen again. And so I was like, yeah, whatever, all right, let me just be a little bit more careful next time. And so there was this other time my mom made this cake, and it was for somebody's retirement party, like this big giant cake. It was like 3 layers tall, and so she made it with this buttercream frosting. That was my favorite frosting that she made, was like the buttercream one. And I was like, oh my God, because you can even smell it. You can smell it. That was the thing, like when she would make it, the house smelled so good. Like you just knew the cake was gonna be good. Like the frosting smelled right, the batter. I was like, man. And so it just smelled so good. I couldn't escape the smell. And so it was only me and my mom in the house. My dad and my brother, I don't even know where they were at, but my mom was upstairs. I was downstairs, and I saw the cake sitting on the table. My mom had already finished the cake. She had decorated it with a little frosting and put the happy retirement, congrats, all the fun stuff she put on there, and put all these nice decorations, and she just covered it with the little dish that would, keep it nice and preserved until the people came to pick it up that evening. And so I was like, okay, I know she said don't do it, but I just want to try a little bit. I just want to try a little bit. Old people don't need a whole bunch of sugar anyway. They all got diabetes, so let me just help them out. I'm saving somebody's life. And so I really wasn't thinking that, but anyway, so I remember I lifted the lid. I remember I set it down all nice and quiet, and then I got my little finger, and I was like, if I go off the side, like on the back side, she's not gonna look, because the problem is I kept dipping from the top. I'm like, let me just get a scoop from the side, because nobody's gonna look at that part. So let me get a scoop from the very bottom on the side. And so, I get my little dip. I was like, oh, that was good. All right, let me get one more, because this, she doesn't make the buttercream frosting too often. This is like once every 3 months, so I'm gonna have to get 2 little scoops off of this. And so I go, let me get a different side of the cake, because for some reason I thought if the frosting was a different color, it would taste better, even though it was just food coloring. And so there was like this blue part, and blue was my favorite color. I was like, oh, I'm gonna get to that part. But the blue part was on the top. Well, it was like 3 layers, but the blue part was on the bottom layer of the, the top half, if that makes any sense. Like 3 parts stacked up, and each stack got smaller as you got higher. And so I went, got my little piece. All right. Then I was like, oh shoot, I can see the fingerprint. I did it too big. I was supposed to do it really light. Okay, what do? Okay, I could just put the lid back on and act like nothing happened, and maybe I should just go outside and pretend I haven't been home. Oh, no, that's not gonna work. Okay, I could just put the lid back on and go wash the dishes and act like I've just been responsible all day. No, that's not gonna work either. Don't go upstairs, because I know she's gonna figure out something is off, because I don't ever go upstairs unless I'm going to my room to play. Okay, I need to fix this cake back to how it was. So then I was like, okay, why don't I get a knife? Because I had seen my mother before, like, spread, like when she would make the cakes, she would always get like this really big, wide knife, and when she put that first layer of frosting on, she would spread it around, and it would just be like the most smooth layer. I was like, I just need to do that. So let me get the big knife and just do the big smooth layer, but just of that spot. I'll smooth it out. And so I get the knife, I go, as soon as the knife touches the cake, I'm like, okay, I just effed up for real. Like, now, mind you, the spot on the cake initially was like the size of the tip of my pinky. It wasn't even that big. My mom just had a good eye when she knew somebody was touching her stuff. And so now I've gotten this big wide knife that's like the size of a ruler, and I've used the top half of it to try to just smooth it out. And what it did was it didn't smooth out anything. It just made like a deep crevice into the frosting. So now I have this big spot on the cake that's now like the size of like a Ritz cracker. I'm like, oh God, what did I do? Okay, don't panic. Let me just spread it a little bit more, and that should fix it. So the more I spread, the worse it started looking. So now that hole that was on the cake that was initially like the tip of my pinky, which went to like a Ritz cracker, it's now like the size of, if you were to get like what's a good example? Say you get like an apple and you cut a thin slice from the middle and put it right on the top. Like, that's how big the spot is now. I'm like, oh God, I've messed up. And I was like, okay, maybe I just need to get more frosting to put on top, because maybe I'm taking away too much. And so I knew my mother used to use like the Crisco can on some of her frostings. And I was like, okay, good thing this part is crap. This part is blue. Crisco's white. So I really went, I got the Crisco, I got the blue food coloring, and I tried to mix it to get it to the right shade of blue, which I couldn't get. Too much. I used too much food coloring for this little scoop of Crisco. And mind you, I'm panicking because I know my dad and brother are gonna be home soon, so I need to move quickly. And there's no telling when my mother may just come downstairs. I mean, I think she was upstairs watching the stories, because she was obsessed with Guiding Light at the time. Which, by the way, I will say, the funniest thing about being in Italy and having only one channel at the time was you watched whatever was on. So to be honest, I ended up knowing all the Guiding Light episodes because we only had one TV that actually had like cable service, or at least that one channel. And so, when my mom was watching Guiding Light, we were all watching Guiding Light. And so, actually no, there was 2 TVs because she had one in her room and one downstairs. But again, we only had one channel, so it didn't matter what TV we watched it on. We were all watching the same thing. And so, I remember like Guiding Light. I remember the storylines. This is like 98 or 97. I remember there was some lady named Reva, and Reva had a husband named Josh, and then there was this woman named Annie who was messing with Josh, and Annie got pregnant, and then Annie tried to kill Reva. And I remember there was some episode where somehow Reva ended up in this plane that Annie was flying, and Annie sabotaged the plane and jumped out in a helicopter, and then Reva ended up on some long lost island, and it was a bunch of stuff. And then somehow Reva got cloned, or Annie got cloned, and then they pretended that the clone was cousin Dolly, and then the clone died after the clone had fell in love with something. Listen, I don't know why I remember that crap, but yeah. So my mom was probably upstairs watching stories or something. Anyway, back to the cake. And so I have my little blue frosting that I'm gonna somehow spread on perfectly, like I did, or like my mother did. Now the issue was this: in order for the frosting to go on unseen, you would have to spread it across the whole cake. Because what my mother would do is she would put that first layer on, then put like another layer on, and then the different frostings and all the different tools and gadgets she had, then she'd decorate the cake. So the only way to make the cake look smooth was you'd have to spread it over the whole cake. Now I wasn't that stupid, so I wasn't gonna do it, but I was like, I'm gonna try to get it as close as I can. And so I went and I've spread this. Now mind you, this is not frosting I'm spreading. This is just grease, Crisco with some food coloring in it, because I was like, I just need it to look like the part. And so I spread it, it's even worse. Now it's not even like smooth. It's like a street with potholes. That's what the cake's looking like. I'm like, damn, man, I'm about to get a whooping. I need to just take this L. So then I was like, you know what? Why don't I try to pretend there was some kind of freak accident that happened that I knew nothing about? And the plan was I was going to go and clean the kitchen, and because we had marble floors in the house. Now, don't think this was like some Ritz-Carlton Astoria hotel marble. No, this is just some regular low-grade marble you put in military housing when you got a house 5,000 people. And so I was gonna, the floor was gonna be slippery because it was marble, so I was gonna go get some socks. Somehow I was gonna make it upstairs, put the socks on, come back downstairs after I've already cleaned the kitchen. And from that point, I was going to go in the kitchen, get one of those big giant spoons that you use for cooking, and I was going to gently and carefully place the back of the spoon exactly on the part of the cake that I messed up. And so the story would go, I was washing the dishes, and somehow, the floor was just really slippery because of the socks I had on, and I slipped and I fell, and when I fell, the spoon flew out of my hand and flew out of the kitchen all the way and landed into the dining room exactly on that spot, where the cake got messed up. Now, mind you, she didn't know that I messed up the cake yet, so it would make her think that the spoon messed up the cake and not me. And all I was doing was being a young, great Christian child of God and washing the dishes so my mother wouldn't have to do it when she finished watching Guiding Light, because I know she works very, very hard. And, it's a lot when you have a 9-year-old and a child that's coming out of the terrible twos phase. And so I just wanted to really make sure that she just had her rest and that, she would be good and she could watch Guiding Light and the people would come and get her cake. And I just wanted to do the right thing. And so that was the plan. And so now it was time to initiate it. So I remember I snuck upstairs. The good thing about having marble floors in the whole house, you can go upstairs and nobody can hear you coming, because it's not like a house with like wooden stairs where you can kind of hear it. No, you couldn't hear anything. So I sneak upstairs, put the socks on, sneak back downstairs, go in the kitchen. I start washing like half the dishes, and then I'm like, okay, it's time for action. So I go, I get the spoon, I put it exactly in the spot where where I messed up on the cake, and then I realized I messed up a little bit too much because I put the spoon in the spot, but then the rest of the spoon, like the stem that you hold when it had to lay down, it messed up even more the cake. I'm like, oh my God, God, please let this work. And so I go back in the kitchen and I'm like, okay, I need to make this really dramatic because she has to hear the commotion, because if I just tell her this happened, she's gonna think I'm lying, so she needs to hear the crash. So I had a few dishes in my hand. It was like this little crate that had a bunch of like spoons and forks in it, and I just drop it on the floor. Then I go, oh no! Oh no! Oh my gosh! Oh no! Like I said like 3 or 4 times. So my mom comes downstairs like, what's going on down here? And I was like, Mom, oh, I fell and everything just flew out of my hand and landed everywhere. And so my mom looks, so I'm on the floor pretending to be hurt and everything, and she looks, she sees her cake, and she sees that spoon that has messed up this cake that she worked on for 2.5 hours, and Michael, I know you're lying. What did you do? And I'm like, Mom, I swear I was just washing the dishes and I slipped and fell because the floor was so slippery and everything just flew out of my hand and I didn't even know it touched the cake. And she's like, Michael, when I went upstairs, the cake had the lid on it. The lid was on the cake. So if all of these things would have magically fell, it should have hit the lid. How did it hit the cake? And I'm like, oh, shit, I didn't think of that. Well, I was trying to wipe the cake thing, cause you know how you said you want me to wipe everything on the table, so I tried to take it off so I could wipe it, cause I didn't want to get the germs on the cake. So then she just stood there and looked at me, and I just looked back at her, and we're just looking at each other, and I'm like, I think I need a Band-Aid, Mom. My mom was like, no, I think you need to go get the belt. Go get the belt. I was like, damn. She was livid. So after she was done with me and had introduced me to the Leather, and Leather and I became friends and got to know each other a little better, she had to go back and actually fix that portion of the cake that was messed up. So she had to literally redo like the entire left bottom portion of the cake and like redo, the frosting and make new frosting and everything. And then it got worse because she noticed that the texture of the frosting where the spoon was not the same texture of the frosting where, the rest of the cake was. And then I think she realized that I had tried to like make my own, because I didn't put the Crisco back. The Crisco was still on the counter and everything. And she was just like, you know what, Michael? You better be happy your dad ain't here. And so she had to fix the cake. I mean, she fixed the cake back. People came and picked it up and it was fine. But man, I was like, that's probably why I don't really have a sweet tooth now. Like when I tell you like today, I don't like cake like that. I'll eat it, but I'm fine. I don't eat ice cream. I rarely eat candy. I'll eat candy, but I'm not a candy person either. Like I don't have a sweet tooth anymore, so I don't know if the Leather just introduced me to vegetables and things that aren't sweet. I don't know, man. Yeah, interesting. Then there was the time my brother had to get his shots. Listen, that had to be one of the funniest moments, because the thing was, when Marcus was growing up, he always wanted to be included in everything. And everything you had, he wanted in on it. Like, if you wanted to do something, he was going to do it. I remember one time, he had this big old knot on his head because he tried to follow me up this slide. Like, the slide had a ladder on it. And mind you, Marcus and I were 7 years apart. At the time, I was like 9 or something. He was like 2.5 or 3. And so he was trying to follow me up the slide. And like the slide, it had a ladder you climb instead of stairs. And so I made it up, and I went on down, and I'm just having me a ball. Yeah, this is great. And then he was still trying to get up the ladder. I wasn't really paying attention to him. And next thing you know, he slips. And he hits his head on like 4 little levels on the ladder. His head went like, duk, 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 duk. I'm like, dang. So he had this big old knot on his head for like a day and a half. But yeah, he always wanted to be included in everything I had. And so me and my brother and my mom, we went to the doctor because it was time for me to get shots for school. And he had to finally get some shots. And he had to get like 4 of them. I only needed to get 2. And so I was at that phase where shots didn't bother me as much, because a few years before, I was that kid that would tear up the doctor's office, screaming and running and hollering on my back, kicking my legs, everything. And then I gotta get a whooping when I get home too for cutting up in the doctor's office. Like, I was that kid. I ran from the needle. Around this time, I was okay. All I had to do was just close my eyes, and I knew if my mom was in there, I was good. I would just look at her, and I'd do like, and then they do the next one. And so anyway, we're at the doctor's office, and so we're waiting, and Marcus was so excited. He didn't remember ever getting shots before. He had got them, but he was too young to remember what they were like. So he didn't know what a shot was. Me, I'm a little nervous, like, okay, all right, okay, this is gonna be real quick. I mean, they're just gonna put the needle in, we'll take it right back out, put it right back in, take it out, and I'm good. He didn't remember what it was. He thought it was gonna be something cool. And you know, the doctor, he saw the kids coming out of the doctor's office with the candy, so he was like, oh, this is about to be lit. And so we're sitting in the lobby, and he's like, when are we gonna get my shot? When are we getting my shot? And that was the other thing. Marcus could speak so well at his age. Like, Marcus could carry a full conversation with you before he was 2. Like, he developed extremely quick as like a baby, as a toddler. Like, he was talking so quick, because I mean, that includes the cuss words and telling people to shut up. He picked all that up real quick. But he was, I want my shot now. I get my shot. Mom was like, you get the shot when it's time to sit down, relax. And everybody in the clinic is like, oh my God, he's so brave. Oh, that's so cute. Oh, what a lovely young man. And so I go in there to get mine, and he starts crying because he wanted to go first. And so he's like just doing the most and everything. So I come out, I get my shots, and then I'm sitting in the lobby, and my mom and Marcus go in there, and Marcus says, yeah, let's do this, yeah. He was hyped about getting his shots. And so first they gave him something he had to drink, some kind of medicine that he was gonna drink, and then the next 4 were gonna be shots. And so I'm ready for my shot. And I couldn't see anything because I went back and sat down, and I watched him close the door. I saw him get the little drink or whatever, and then they closed the door, and then all you could do was hear what was next. And so you hear, hey, whoa, that hurt! And then he starts screaming, ah! And then the people in the lobby are like, oh my God, is that the boy who wanted his shot? I was like, yeah, that's him. And so for the next 10 minutes, Marcus is in there screaming. It's like the Exorcist in there. Just, I don't know what was going on in that room. You hear stuff falling over. You hear my mom you can hear, Marcus, calm down. And he, hi, my mom, it's gonna be all right. Just sit still. Here, hold my head. I'm like, yo, Marcus, he tore that office up. It was a mess. He came out of there, nose running, eyes red, watery. He had like 4 Band-Aids. Different colors and everything. He didn't even want the candy. He didn't even want the candy. He was just, get me out of there. He was so pissed. When I tell you he slept so good in the car ride home, like, that boy was shook. I said, poor thing. He was mad at everybody. He was like, y'all set me up. This was not what a shot was. I don't know what he thought a shot was supposed to be, but Lord, he had to get 4 of them. Goodness. Now, when it came to school, I had a much better experience in 4th grade than 3rd grade. One, I think the teacher played a huge role. I had this teacher named Mrs. Linden. Mrs. Linden was really cool. She was an older woman. I think she had retired and then came back and started teaching again. But she was somebody who had lived all around the world. Like, she'd been in China, she'd been all around Europe, parts of Asia, had lived in the United States and everything like that. And so she had been able to work with different groups of youth from all around the world. And so she had a better grasp on how to work with groups of kids. And one of the things that she really did that I kind of incorporate with how I run my center now is she used music for everything. There was so much music in the class. Mind you, the school still had music class you went to, but as far as her classroom, like, every day we would start this class with like a song, and she had this whole song book of songs, and you would pick whichever one, and then we would sing it as a class. And it sounds corny now looking back, but at that age it was the coolest thing, especially if it was one of those really fun call and response songs. And the main element that I took that I still use today is she did music therapy when it came to doing classwork. So, we'd go over the assignment, we'd go over what it was we were supposed to do. She'd give the assignment, and then when it was time for us to work on those assignments individually, during what would be quiet time, when students are doing their work, she put music on. And the good thing about the music was it was always jazz, it was always classical, it was always something that most of us never knew. Like, it wasn't going to be anything that was on the radio that we could sing along to. It was always something we'd never heard before. And before you know it, everybody in the class would be very intrigued by what was playing, and you didn't even realize you were listening to Bach. You didn't realize you were listening to, Gimmieabeat No. 1. You didn't realize you were listening to all these jazz pieces. You didn't realize, it was Billie Holiday, it was Etta James. Like, she played all kind of things. And the cool thing was she let you pick the music. She had this counter with maybe like 50 CDs on it. And then every day would be a day for a student to pick what album was going to play. And we never knew any of these people. So you look and you'd see Far East Suite by Duke Ellington, or After the Storm by Norman Brown, or a Kenny G album, or something that was really easy listening, or even Sade albums. Like, it was all, I kind of knew the Sade ones, because like, oh, I know this song, my dad plays this in the car. But there was just always something different to hear. And this is when I started to recognize that I really liked smooth jazz. The difference between jazz and smooth jazz is that smooth jazz is more rhythmic, and it kind of has a groove to it with, a nice funky bass line and a good little drum riff, and it's kind of something you can shake your shoulder to in comparison to the more traditional jazz pieces that are very big and in your face with orchestra hits, and it's almost like Broadway, you know what I mean? And so I really, really liked a lot of the smooth jazz songs, and I can't remember the albums I used to always play, but I knew when it was my day to pick the album, there was like 3 or 4 albums I would always rush to play. The Norman Brown was definitely one of them, and I like the Norman Brown one because I recognized his version of Janet's That's the Way Love Goes. I was like, wait a minute, I know this song. When is she gonna sing? And then I was like, wait, she's not singing, there's a saxophone playing instead. Okay, that's different. So I always liked playing his album, and I was obsessed with this song called Rainforest by Paul Hardcastle, and it came out years ago, but way before I was born, but I absolutely was obsessed with that song. It just had this funky, almost kind of like a club groove to it, but there was no words. It's just this really unique melody. He had another song, I think it was called like He Was 19 or something like that. It was a song about the Vietnam War. And she would play, and sometimes she would play like soft rock songs, and so sometimes she'd play like the Doobie Brothers. She would sometimes play Carly Simon or Joni Mitchell. Like, there was just, you got a really eclectic vibe in the classroom when she put music on. So if she was playing something that did have lyrics, the lyrics were going to be so thought-provoking that it was just different from what you normally would hear on the radio. And and she loved Earth, Wind & Fire as well. It was kind of cool. And I think that might have been one of the first times I heard their song Brazilian Rhyme. Either I heard it from my father or I heard it in that classroom. But I was obsessed with that song. Like, I used to be like that. I don't know why it was such a euphoric song, but man, so those were good times. And you'd be doing your classwork, but something about the music playing, it made time not seem like a thing. It made it seem as if you had all the time in the world and you didn't feel constrained by being in the classroom for 8 hours a day. It just made the day go by so fast, and it just made even doing cumbersome work feel less cumbersome, because even if you hated the schoolwork you were doing, at least the music sounded good that was in the room. And I think 4th grade, we had some of the best field trips I can remember as far as my experience in K through 12. In comparison to my elementary years in America, we would go to the zoo and the lion wouldn't be out that day, so you just look at the tree in the grass where the lion would have been, and you'd go see the monkey that didn't want to be bothered, so he'd throw poop at the glass, or you'd go and see some play that was extremely boring, and then afterwards you'd take the bus with the class to the mall and y'all would eat in the food court, and that would be the highlight. And those were still fun trips, but in comparison, when I think back, the cool thing about being in Vicenza was that we were so close to so many, features that people fly around the world to come and see. So we went to places like Ravenna, which has pretty much a large collection of mosaics that you find around the world. Mosaics are just those art pieces that are made with, I forgot what the tiles are called. It's not marble and it's not granite, but it's some kind of tile, but you pretty much put all the tile pieces together and it makes pictures. And so we'd go and see like St. Justinian and his, I can't remember what it was called, I guess his castle or something like that. We went to Florence, and actually the Florence trip was an overnight trip, which I thought was cool. I didn't even know you could do that. And that was dope because at the time, this kid Ricky, which I'm going to talk about in a minute because we're about to talk about the boy band. Ricky and Marcus were both in that class, and I remember the 3 of us, and not my brother Marcus, but I had a friend Marcus that was in my class. the three of us got to be roommates at the hotel, and we thought that crap was so cool because we were away from home, and we just felt so free. And in Florence, you went and you saw the work of Donatello and Michelangelo and Leonardo and Raphael, and that was crazy because I didn't realize that the Ninja Turtles at the time were named after these artists. I was like, that's cool. And we saw the 17-foot David statue, and we saw Brunelleschi's dome and the work of Ghiberti and all this stuff that, for one, it wasn't anything we cared about, but then you fast forward to when you're an adult, you're like, oh, I really went and saw that, huh? That's cool. And so Florence was a fun trip, and even going to the different restaurants and trying all the different foods, because at this point, my taste buds have shifted, and I'm starting to appreciate the Italian food. Because if you remember in the previous episode on this, I hated the food when I got to Italy. I was like, what is this crap? My taste buds were still very calibrated to what we were doing in America as far as fast food. And of course, when you're young already, you really like stuff that's extremely salty and full of sugar and everything. And so it took a minute to adjust to eating food that wasn't as processed and didn't have as much, junk in it, kind of. And so, the field trips were dope. And then we went to Venice one time, which my mom was a chaperone, and really she just wanted to go shopping. I swear that's what it was. That's the only reason she came to the trip. But we went to Venice. We went everywhere. We saw, I can't even think of all the places, but I mean, that we would go to castles, and we would go to old military forts from World War II, and the trip I did hate, though, we went to the cheese factory. That grossed me out because I don't like cheese. I was like, the smell alone was killing me. I was like, this is the nastiest thing I've ever done. And then it sucked because lunch that day was something that was made with the cheese at the factory. I brought my own food that day. I was like, I'm not eating that. The smell killed me. And then when I saw how they made the cheese and how when they have to cure it and let it mature and just let it sit for 18 months and get mold, and then they just cut the mold off, I was like, oh, that's what y'all be eating? Nope, not I, said the cat. So school really started coming together when I was in 4th grade. In comparison to the year before with Mr. Robert Shaw, I wasn't getting all these underperforming scores. And on top of that, now we had real letter grades, and so you could really see the difference. So I wasn't getting A's, but I was getting a lot of B's and some C's, which at that time was so much better than what I had been getting the year before. The only thing that kind of sucked is I was never an organized kid. I was always the kid that had remember the desks where you could put all the stuff in the desk? I always had the junkiest desk. I had the worst handwriting. I would lose things. I wasn't always timely. And that used to work against me sometimes when Miss Linden would give the weekly reports and she put the note about what you did that week. And it would say, oh, Michael's desk was still very messy. Michael couldn't find his math assignment. And so my father used to hold on to all of that. And the thing was, because I did so terrible the year before, my father was not playing when it came to the schoolwork at all. And I remember this time in Miss Linden's class, we had this whole month where we were doing poetry. And we had to all write these little poetry pieces, and we were going to put it in this booklet, and then we were going to invite our parents to come in one day, and we were going to share our poetry. It was called like a poetry tea. And so Ms. Linden had made all these different teas and everything, and we had cookies, and the classroom was all decorated, and of course she had the music playing in the background, and the parents started coming in, and they all had these special seats. And so all the kids were excited. I was nervous because my mom and dad were both coming. I'm like, oh God, I don't know how this is going to go, because the thing I hated, my parents, anytime they came to the school, they always wanted to talk to the teacher. Even if you were doing good, they still wanted some time to talk to the teacher. They wanted to make sure I was doing right. I'm like, please, God, don't let them come in here and embarrass me. And so we're trying to do the poetry thing, and all the kids are reading their poems, and the parents are sitting by their kids, and my dad's sitting by me. So instead of my dad listening to all of the kids read their poems about the rain and their favorite shoe and what their favorite color was, my dad is digging through my desk, taking out all the papers. Why you got all this junk in your desk? Loud, the paper's crumpling, and my mom was like, Michael, he's trying to, the kid's doing the poem, Michael. And I'm like, Dad, you're embarrassing me. Shut up, Michael, shut up. What is this? What, you got a D on this? Like, he was going through all my assignments. Well, he was not there for no kind of poetry. He wanted to know what his son was doing. I was so embarrassed. I was like, God, Dad, you're so embarrassing. Embarrassing? You gonna find out about embarrassing. Is this the assignment you was missing from last week? You know what? I'm gonna talk to your teacher. You're not going to recess this week. I'm gonna make sure you are not to go to recess this week. My parents did not play with me when it came to school. But one of the funniest ways I think I got them back was my parents, especially my mother, was obsessed with always cleaning the house. I hated it because the house would already be clean, but it was never clean enough for her. And I don't know if it's like a black mom thing or anything like that, but I mean, goodness, it would never be clean enough. You could literally wash, and here's the thing, I had to wash all the dishes by hand. We had a dishwasher, but my mom didn't like me using it. So, you'd have to wash the dishes by hand, you'd have to vacuum, and mind you, we had marble floors. There was nothing to vacuum, but they had one big rug in the living room over the marble floor. You had to vacuum that. You'd have to take out all the trash. Of course, your room had to be clean. I had to make sure Marcus's room was clean for whatever he didn't clean up, and I just used to hate it. And so I knew I couldn't talk back. And so when we were in 4th grade, we used to have this part where we used to have to do story time, where you'd write stories and everything like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make up a new story about my mom and my dad. It really just ended up being about my mom, but pretty much the synopsis of all of these stories, because there were 7 or 8 of them that I wrote in 4th and 5th grade, was that my mom was just this crazy lady that made us do these unthinkable things in order to keep the world clean. Like, it turned into this whole fictionary novel where my mom was just obsessed with cleaning, and then somehow I had been kidnapped, and my friend Ricky and Dwayne and Keith, these other kids I knew, she kidnapped all 4 of us, and she took us in this van, and we had to go and clean the whole world. And one of the parts of the story I still remember was like, she made us mop the street until it was white. Like, stupid kids. But the best part was then after you wrote the story and you drew the pictures, you get to read it to the class. And so that's when Miss Linden discovered, okay, Michael has a gift of keeping people entertained, because I would read these stories and I would be in the character and the whole class would just be in there dying. And it got to the point where my little stories were so popular that then Ms. Linden would actually let me go and share mine with the other 4th grade classes in the school. And before you knew it, it was kind of a cool thing where it was like, okay, Michael's the kid with the funny stories about his mom, until my mom found out. But she was actually a good sport about it, and she thought it was funny herself. And because I just knew I was gonna get like my face broken off or something when she saw these stories, because even the pictures I drew of her were not nice pictures. It was like the picture, in the cartoons where, I don't know, somebody sticks a fork in the outlet and they get electrocuted and their hair flies in the air. Like, that was the picture I drew of her. It was like, that's what she looked like in the story. It was kind of a cool way to vent all of my frustration without getting in trouble, and doing it creatively. And it also opened doors for things later down the line, which would show, okay, you're actually a pretty good writer. This is actually your lane. You're pretty good at doing this. You're pretty good at storytelling. It's just funny how everything works full circle. Who would have known, me being pissed off because my mom said I didn't dust good enough would somehow, turn into me writing some random stories and then presenting them in front of the class, and then you fast forward years later and then I'm writing a web series or doing comedy or podcasting or YouTubing. Everything just kind of flows together, so it's always kind of interesting how things align. And even today, I still actually have one of those stories with me. I was always one of those people who held on to things because everything had a sentimental value to it. And so at my mother's house, there's like this big, actually there's 2 of them, these 2 big crates with just all kind of old homework assignments, pictures, letters, postcards, just all kind of things from childhood. And when I went home to visit my mother the last time before she moved from Seattle, I found the first version of that story in the crate, and so I brought it back with me, and I actually shared it with my kids from work. And it was kind of interesting because the kids only know me as Mr. Michael, so for them to kind of see where I was as a 4th grader, they thought that was the funniest thing. I was like, okay, cool. And then listen, even I read the story too. I read it to them the same way I would have read it back in the day, with all the character, development and breaking into the different roles. And them kids was in there cracking up. So I'm like, okay, I must have been real good, because this story is definitely like 20 years old. But it's just funny how things align. I guess I'll share like a piece of the book the next time I go live on YouTube. I just want people to see that picture I drew of my mom and what I thought she looked like at the time. Anyway, so another thing that I was really, really into, I was obsessed with animals. Like, I've always been an animal person anyway. Like, I'm not gonna lie, y'all. I want a dog so bad, but I just don't have time to take care of one, and I'm not home enough to take care of a dog. And because I have an apartment and I don't have a yard, it would kind of suck to leave a dog cooped up in the apartment all day, and then you're out all night. And then I'm trying to picture having a dog while I'm trying to record a podcast or recording the album or doing whatever else I'm doing. Just, so what I do for my fix, I have an old coworker who has a dog, Barkley, and I go to their house to play with their dog, Barkley, and then my other coworker has a dog, Rusty, and I go play with Rusty when I need to get my dog fixed. So I don't plan on getting a dog until I have some kids and I have a yard. So that's probably like another 10 years from now, because the kids got to be old enough to play with the dog and watch the dog. But anyway, moving on. I was always obsessed with animals, and so I was this kid that used to just trap and capture everything, especially like reptiles and insects. I had everything. So I had a bunch of spiders that I used to just trap, and I put them in a jar, and I'd, make their habitat in the jar, and I'd throw a little mosquito eater or something in there for the spider to eat. So I had jars full of spiders. I had a walking stick, which was kind of the boring thing to have because they didn't do anything. They just kind of stayed in one place. So I had a walking stick. What else did I have? I had a couple frogs. I captured 2 or 3 birds before. I had a lizard. I mean, it was just all kind of things. And my mom, it used to piss her off because our house in Italy didn't have a garage. So at least if we had a garage, they could stay in the garage. No, we didn't have a garage. All we had was a shed in the back. And so all of the jars and stuff used to be in my room. And my mom was like, I don't think so. All that crap needs to go outside. So she made me put it all in the shed. But yeah, I used to just have all these different animals and things like that. And so we were reading Charlotte's Web in 4th grade, and I was obsessed with the spiders I had. And so I remember Miss Linden let me keep 2 of the spider jars in the class so we could just watch and observe. And the spider ended up laying eggs. And like with the jar, you poke the holes in the top so that the spider can breathe. And so we went on Christmas break, and when we came back, the eggs had hatched, and those little spiders were all over the classroom, everywhere. I mean, it wasn't like an infestation or anything, but you just go, you'd walk to the pencil sharpener, you see one crawling by the light switch, and then you go to the chalkboard, there might be one sitting by the chalk, and then, you go to your desk and there'd be one crawling out. There was at least a few hundred spiders in the classroom, but they were all tiny. They were like the size of literally like a grain of sand. They were so small. And Miss Lynn was like, okay, Michael, you gotta get these spiders out of here. These things gotta go. Because we didn't know it was gonna hatch and lay eggs. But I thought it was the coolest thing because I was like, this is just like Charlotte's Web at the end when the eggs hatched after the mom died in the movie. Long story short, eventually I don't even know how we got rid of the spiders. I don't know if they all just kind of started dying because there was no food for them to eat in the classroom. I don't know what happened, but eventually all the little spiders were gone after a while. But yeah, Miss Linda made me get rid of my spider jars and go release them outside. And then there was the boy band. I've always been obsessed with music, and I've always liked the feeling of being in front of audiences. And so I think the best gift my mother ever bought me was this keyboard when I was about 9. And it wasn't even like a real professional keyboard. It was one of those keyboards that had maybe 30 keys on it. And so I never knew how to really play it. I just used to make noise on it. Because what's funny? With everything that I do, I don't think I've had training in any of it, maybe other than singing, and that was because I had to sing in church, and so you kind of got trained from the director, and they would kind of teach you different things, and you'd indirectly learn things. But as far as like music, everything I learned as far as composing was by ear. It was just kind of raw talent. So if you put some sheet music in front of me, it's gonna take me forever to figure out how to play it because I can't read music that well. And so like even with the last album and when it's coming out, like everything is just all by ear. When it came with the dancing, I never had any official training. It was just always, I always say people are one of two spectrums. Either they're gifted because it's something they've always had, or they're skilled because they've been trained to do it. And so in my later years, I've been trying to get to the medium where I'm in the middle of both of that, because I think I've always been on the gifted side, but I never considered myself skilled because I never had training in a lot of things, and it was always just self-taught, which is cool, but sometimes you do want to be a little bit more formal with how you do things and have more formal training. And so I've been trying to capture that medium, but I've always said I was more so on the side of just gifted, where it's just something I always had. I'm not trying to act like I'm the best thing walking around. But anyway, going back to my point. And so I never really knew how to play the piano. I just taught myself over the years. But anyway, so my mom bought me this keyboard, and I was obsessed with it. I used to just play on it all day and play and hit different notes. And the keyboard had a few little extra drum kits, and you could have the samples play with the demos. And so the kid Magic next door, I remember he would come over, and my friend Larry. By the way, Larry had to be the funniest kid because Larry was this kid from North Carolina, and Larry had a stutter too, so he had that southern accent with a stutter. And listen, I would fight somebody over Larry. Like, nobody was gonna talk about my friend because folks used to always try to make fun of him when he stuttered. But Larry and Magic would come over, and I remember I would have my keyboard. We would stack up books and pencils and buckets and pots and pans, and Magic would get some pencils, and then he would be the drummer. And then Larry, we didn't really know what Larry was gonna do. He was just gonna be like the extra singer in the group, and we'd be in my room, and I'd have this little cassette player, and we would just push record, and we'd be in there recording our tape or our album, just making all kind of noise. And we'd be in there singing our little hearts out, just like trying to do covers of songs that were already out. Mind you, none of us know how to play anything, so I don't know what it sounds like, but you'd occasionally hear my mom from downstairs like, "Shut up!" And so guess it didn't sound good. So that was one group, but then it was time for the talent show at school. And so I had another friend, Marcus, and another friend, Ricky. And at the time, Men in Black was huge. Men in Black had just come out. For kids, Will Smith was the say-all, be-all in music. And actually, Big Willie Style was one of the first albums I ever was able to go buy on my own. this is around the time I started buying CDs as well. Like, my dad's ear was also shifting, so he wasn't really listening to hip-hop and R&B anymore, so he was also letting me get all of his old CDs and everything like that. So I was discovering a lot of really cool music and stuff. Like, I remember the first time I heard Michael Jackson's Rock With You, I didn't know it was a song from 1980. I thought it had came out that week. It just sounded fresh and new. And that's why I always say, like, with music, you know, a lot of it, as far as our perceptions to music when you're kids, it's all marketing and PR and what's presented to you, because if music is timeless, it's always going to sound good no matter how old it is or how new it is, you know? And so that's one of the downsides to the music industry, is that we become a society that's very dismissive of the unknown, or we go along with the wave of what everybody else is on. And so if not enough people support something or have heard about something, the assumption is that it's not good. And so I think that's one of the downsides to music today. But anyway, so I started discovering all these CDs, and so remember, like I said, Big Willie Style was one of the first CDs I bought, and Men in Black was the last song on it. And then on top of that, if you had the Men in Black VHS, the music video for Men in Black played either at the end of the movie or at the beginning. And so everybody used to try to do the dance from the video when he, let me see you just bounce with me. Just like everybody used to try to do that mess. And so the school had announced they were doing a talent show. Marcus and I were like, yeah, let's do the talent show. And so at the same time, I remember Magic and Larry like, I thought you were gonna do it with us. And I'm thinking like, nah. I was so shady at the time. Cause in my head I was thinking, Magic isn't really coordinated, and no disrespect to Larry, but I don't know if he's gonna be able to get the song out the right way. And so please don't take that as me being terrible, but that was me thinking as a 9-year-old at the time, all right? Gotta put it all into context. And so I was like, yeah, I'm moving in a new direction, guys. You know, I'm moving in a new direction, because in my head, I was the Teddy Riley, the Aaron Hall of the group. Like, I'm going in a different direction. And so Marcus and I were like, yeah, let's do the talent show. And so Marcus and I started telling everybody we were gonna do the Men in Black song. And our other friend Ricky was like, wait a minute. No, y'all not, because I'm doing that song. And we're like, we're doing Men in Black because I got the VHS at home. We already know the dance and everything. We're gonna be the ones doing it. And Ricky was like, no, I already said I'm doing it. Like, y'all should do the Space Jam song. And we're like, you do the Space Jam song. We don't want to do that. You do it. Because remember, Space Jam was really big around that same time too. The come on and sing and welcome to the jam. Like, that movie was dope too. And so we were like, no, we don't want to do that. So somehow we came to an agreement that we would just all do Men in Black together, the three of us, and we'd be a new group. And so I was like, okay, this can work. I think this can work, because Marcus and I are in the same class. Ricky's not in our class, but he's in the class across the hall, but we all live in the same neighborhood. So okay, and so we would start practicing, and practice would be the craziest thing, because it wasn't really practice. The difference between Marcus and I in comparison to Ricky was that Ricky was actually talented. And Ricky's parents had invested in his talents. So Ricky was a really, really good dancer. He could break dance. He knew how to do all of the latest everything. His parents had him in different little modeling gigs and had him doing different events and everything like that. Marcus and I were cut from a different cloth. That wasn't even our world. And again, I'm talking about my friend Marcus, not my little brother Marcus. And so we would go to either Ricky's house or Marcus's house to practice. And practice would go as follows. Ricky would have the radio on, and he'd be dancing in front of the mirror and like, okay, y'all, come on. Marcus and I would be on the Sega playing Streets of Rage, or the PlayStation playing Tekken, and of course I was Eddie Gordo. Oh, we coming, man, we coming. We know our part. You just keep practicing. And so, you know, we would never really practice. Or Marcus and I would do like a quick two-step and sing the hook one time, and then that was the other argument. Ricky was not gonna let us do the verses. He was like, I'm gonna rap all the parts. You guys do the singing part. You do the hook. And I'm like, I'm not doing the hook. Do you know who I am? Like, I want to do the rap part, because at the time, I was really listening to all of my dad's old CDs, and so my favorite rappers at the time, even though they weren't even really out anymore, Redhead Kingpin, Young MC, Big Daddy Kane, Heavy D was probably my favorite, and he was still kind of out, because I remember he had the I Got Nothing But Love For You song, so Heavy D was out. Marcus, on the other hand, Marcus had discovered Bad Boy, so he was all about Mace, and about Diddy, and about the Lox, and so, you know, we were like, we want to rap too, like, I'm trying to get my verse in, and at the time, there was this girl, Talonda, that was my little girlfriend, and so for me, the talent show in my head was like, even though it was just in the school gym and you play the CD and do your little song, to me, it was, I'm at Madison Square Garden, I got backup dancers, there's gonna be lasers and everything like that. You know, I'm gonna be dancing with my shirt open, because that's what all the R&B groups were doing at the time. Like, I'm trying to sell it to my woman, Talonda, so I got to come with it. So I just can't be singing the hook, because nobody ever remembers who sings on the song. That's probably why most people didn't know Coco sang the hook on Men in Black, because she wasn't credited. So I don't want to be one of those people. So I remember, we fought, and so practice would keep going, and then one day, Ricky was like, you know what? I'm going in a different direction. I think I'm gonna do this solo. I don't really need you to. We're like, what? Do you know who we are? You don't need us. First of all, well, we leave, we take the song with us. And Ricky was like, no, it's already, you're not. And for some reason, we just punked out and we're like, fine, we don't need this song. Do the stupid song. We'll do our own thing. And so Marcus and I went, and we're like, we're just going to do our own thing. And so we decided we were going to do New Edition's Hit Me Off, which I don't know how the school let us do this song because it's not a child-friendly song. Love in the shower for an hour. Okay, hit me off. Let me take you for a ride to the other side. So then came the day for the talent show. And it's crazy because I vividly remember this day. Like I said before in the last episode, the elementary, the middle, and the high school were all in the same building. And so with this talent show, what they would do is the elementary would have their talent show, and then the acts that were really, really, really good from the elementary, in addition to getting first, second, and third place, they'd also get to perform at the bigger talent show later that same day for the middle and the high school, because we all had to share the same gym. And so I remember all the acts that performed in the elementary group. I remember there was like 4 or 5 different Spice Girl acts, because the Spice Girls were huge at the time. You know, I never really paid attention to them. I mean, I knew the main song Wannabe, but Spice Girls, they just were never on my radar. But at the time, the kids were obsessed with them. So they were like 4 or 5 Spice Girls acts. There was this group of girls that did Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On, but they didn't sing it. They did some kind of chair dance. There was this kid that did Feel So Good by Mace, and I remember thinking like, dang, why didn't we do that song? Because that song it was lit at the time. Like, man, I was like, why didn't we think to do that? And to Londa, I remember she sang Whitney Houston's Who Would Imagine a King, because it was from the Preacher's Wife soundtrack, and I think the movie had just come out, and so that was big too. But unfortunately for her CD skipped right during the middle of the song, so she's singing in One Day an Angel, and it was so bad, because this is back when it was hard to get instrumental versions of songs. So a lot of times, pretty much every act that performed, we were really just singing or performing with the CD. And I mean, that CD just kept skipping. And I remember she was standing there crying. And then the people just cut the music off and she walked off the stage. I was like, dang, ooh, sucks to be her. And so I remember she did that. And listen, even Larry found his own group to get in. Him and Magic got together with like 4 or 5 other kids, and they danced to Backstreet Boys' Everybody, Rock Your Body, whatever that song is called. And mind you, at the time, I thought the Backstreet Boys were black. Because again, like I said, there was no MTV or anything like that. So you'd hear the songs, but you couldn't see who was singing them. And that song at the time just sounded real funky to me, so I thought it was some black folks. I didn't know it was a bunch of white boys singing that. But I mean, Larry and them got it in. I said, old country Larry from North Carolina. I mean, him and that left foot, they got the cranking it with their routine. I was like, dang. And I mean, they were actually really good. What they did, I think they tried to do the same choreography from the video. Like, I think that's what they did. Because my mom recorded the whole talent show, because my mom was in the audience, which made it even worse. And so I remember Larry's group, they did their thing. And then it was Ricky's turn. And mind you, the tension was thick. Like, me and Ricky was semi-beefing. Like, I was mad because he kicked me out the group. So I remember, like, at recess, he couldn't be on our team when we played basketball. And if he came to my house, I wouldn't let him be first player on the game no more. He had to be second player on whatever game we played. And I used to always let him borrow my memory card for Crash Bandicoot. I wouldn't let him borrow the memory card no more. Like, nope, you can't borrow it. Nope. And so Ricky goes out there, kills it. Ricky was just already swagged out. He had on this real baggy, like, black hoodie outfit with the visor flipped up. He had on the Jordans and everything. He had his big old giant chain. And he was one of the few kids that had an earring. And I remember from the time that he started, as soon as the music played, the audience was literally just eating out of his hand. All the little girls were just, and Ricky just was dancing, and he'd go from this side of the gym and go to that side of the gym, then he would do a flip and then do this little dance, and then he'd bust out his break dance and stuff, and then he'd put the mic down and do another step and then pick the mic back up and do a spin, and he was just spitting out all the verses. And then Marcus and I are just sitting there hating, and I'm like, well, he can't sing, so I don't know what he's gonna do when the hook comes on. So instead of Ricky singing the hook, all he does is point the mic to the audience, the whole audience. Here comes the man in black. I was like, are you serious? Oh, I was hot. I was so jealous. I was so mad. Like, Ricky killed it. Totally, I mean, just ate it. I was like, ugh. And the worst part was we had to go right after him. I was like, fudge, frick. All right, and so Marcus and I thought we was gonna be good, but I was like, dang, I was already pissed because I didn't like what I had on, because I didn't have on the cool clothes like Ricky. One, my father did not believe in buying name brand shoes, so I had on some Everlast at the time, and I used to get mad because if you didn't have name brands at the time, people said you wore Bobos, and so I used to get roasted when I would wear the Everlast, but those were the only shoes I had that I didn't tear a hole into, and so they're like, oh, he got on them Everlasting Bobos today, everlasting indeed. I'm like, F all of y'all. And so I got on my Everlasting Bobos, and I had had a huge feet. I was 9, but at that time I was a size 7 in men's, which for a 4th grader, that's ridiculous. Like, that's a men's size for a little tiny kid. I probably was like 70, 80 pounds. And so I got these big old giant feet. I had on this big bright yellow shirt, and then I spilled some paint on my jeans from art class earlier that day, so I'm out there looking like Big Bird. And then Marcus was a little swagged out. And so our song starts. Marcus and I haven't really rehearsed what we're gonna do. We just knew that we were gonna sing. I was gonna sing the first verse, and then he was gonna do the second verse and the rap, and we'd do the hook together. But there was only one microphone, so we'd have to somehow figure out how to share the mic. And so we didn't practice any of this beforehand. And so our song starts. I did my part. I did what I could do. And so the first 30 seconds of the performance was cool. And then it just started falling apart. Because Marcus and I were fighting over when it was time to pass the mic to each other. Because when the hook would come on, I wanted to sing the "Come on, baby." Like, I was ready, but Marcus had the mic. I'm like, give me the mic, it's my part. And we didn't think to just kind of stand together and hold the mic together. And nope, we was fighting over the mic. So Marcus would walk one way, and I'm walking after him to go get the mic. And then after that part, like, literally, after I did my verse, Marcus just did the rest of the song. Because he had the other verse and the rap. And he did the hook. So I was just kind of standing there, trying to dance. And the audience was just kind of looking at us. And it didn't help that my mom's in the audience with the video camera, cracking up, smiling. Not smiling because she's proud of her son, but smiling because she knows that she is going to roast me when I get home. And as soon as there's company coming, they're going to put that tape on and they're going to sit back and just cackle and laugh down. And so you have this performance. And then I remember at the very end, Marcus and I, we did have this one piece we tried to do together, some dance, and we weren't even coordinated, we weren't even on the same foot. And the audience, they give us courtesy claps. They gave, the courtesy claps because they didn't want to laugh at us. It was so bad. It was horrible. It was so embarrassing. And the worst part, I have it on video, but freaking UPS, when I moved back to the DMV, my father was mailing me all of my home videos so we could put them on DVD. UPS lost my box. I did a video on it years ago. They lost this box I had with all of my home videos from probably age 6 to age 17. And so, like, that entire chapter of my childhood is gone. It pisses me off every time I think about it. I'm like, ugh. That was birthday parties, that was field trips, all that crap is gone. I get so mad every time I think about it. But anyway, it was so bad. And then the worst part is when they started announcing the winners, because in my head I thought we still killed it. I'm like, yeah, we good. We did what we could do. At least our CD didn't skip. And plus I sounded good on my part, so we're good. So Ricky ends up getting 3rd place. And I'm like, yep, deserved. So I'm thinking, okay, well, at least we got 2nd. And then 2nd place, oddly enough, was Larry and Magic's group, the little Backstreet Boys thing. They got like 2nd place. And then the winner was one of them Spice Girl acts. I was like, wait, so we didn't even win? Oh, I was hot. I was like, this is some BS. This is some bullcrap. And then I tried to make fun of Ricky because all he got was $10. I was like, oh, that's it. Talking trash. Then embarrass myself. That's all you got? Horrible. Kids are such haters, man. Kids can be the worst. Overall, I had a really good time during this period. And if you remember, or if you've been following the podcast, I did an episode called The Running Away Fail, where I tried to run away and I just ran away to the park. And there was another episode where I talked about being the only black kid at summer camp. This was all during 4th grade, but I've already done episodes on that, so we don't have to talk about it again. But there was just so much that happened. But my favorite memory of this time was playing Manhunt in the cornfields. That crap used to be so much fun. So the neighborhood we lived in was called Villaggio, and it was an American housing area, and it was outside of the base, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. So in between the housing area and the base, there was like these 2 big giant farms, and then you get into the residential part, and then you'd cross the street, and then there was the military base. But we used to stay playing in the farms. Like, there was these 2 big giant cornfields, and we weren't supposed to play in them anyway. And mind you, the fields, they'd be empty all year. Like during the winter, the seeds would be planted, and then they would start to sprout. But by the time summer hit, those corn little plants would be so tall. And I remember we would play Manhunt and just run through all those things, and that Italian farmer used to cuss us out because we weren't supposed to be playing in that. Secondly, we weren't really supposed to be leaving the housing area, but you kind of had free reign to kind of just do what you want. As long as you had your military ID, you could leave the housing area and get back in, or go onto the base and get back in. You had free will to kind of just go around, and the area was pretty safe, so you didn't really have to worry about being kidnapped or anything. But man, that cornfield tag, that crap was so much fun. And it would get scary too if you played it late, like when the sun started going down. But I had curfew, so I couldn't be out too late. And that was one thing I used to always break. I used to stay breaking curfew. And if my dad had to get in the Jeep and come look for me, and I always had my bike. I remember one time, I think I was still at the pool, because like I said, there was a neighborhood pool, and you'd pay, I think, $1 or $2 to get in, and as long as you were at least 10 years old, or you could get in by yourself. If you weren't 10, you needed an adult or an older teenager to come with you, and I would just lie and say I was 10, because all they do was ask you when you were born. So I'm like, oh, okay, let me just take a year off my birth date and go from there, because I was still 9. And so I think we were at the pool, and I was still drying off, getting ready to head home. I saw my dad's Jeep pulling up, and he was like, listen, what time are you supposed to be home? I was like, I was on my way. I'll tell you this, you better get home before I do. And so then my dad would drive. I remember I would hop on that bike. I'd be pushing it, pedaling so hard just to make it on time. I mean, I would be cutting through people's yard and everything. And sometimes I would make it, and other times I wouldn't. And I used to hate it because then I'd be on punishment, and punishment meant like you couldn't go outside. And I was already a dork to begin with, so for me, punishment meant I couldn't play with my Legos either. Like, I was one of those kids that would build whole mansions and cities with Legos and popsicle sticks and anything I could build with. So that was part of the punishment, was like, you gotta put the Legos away, and you can't play the video games, and no friends are coming over, and you're not going outside, and you can't go to the pool, and this person can't come over, and you can't do that. And as a matter of fact, on Friday, you're going to Joy Night with your mama, because Joy Night was at church, and Joy Night was torture, because it was like a church service that was at 7 p.m., and you wouldn't get out till like 10 o'clock. I used to hate going to that mess. Like, man, ooh. So I was always trying to make sure I made curfew. But overall, like, it was just a really good time. And one of the coolest things I will always remember is that on TV, when you did watch it, every advertisement was something that was educational or informative. There weren't regular, like, you wouldn't see an ad for, I don't know, AOL online, because that was kind of something that was new at the time. Or you wouldn't see an ad for medicine or anything. Every ad was something educational. So the ad would be a trivia question like, this state was founded in 1889. What state is it? And then the commercial would give you like 10 seconds to take a guess before they told you the answer is Washington. And so you literally learn just from watching TV. Indirectly, you didn't even realize as you're sitting there watching whatever show, all of the ads that we're going to play, we're going to teach you something. So I ended up learning all the 50 states just from watching TV. I ended up learning about all of these different historical figures. And of course, because this was still military network, they tell you learn about who the Medal of Honor recipients of the past were. A lot of the commercials would give you insight onto what life would have been like during the past. That's how I learned how the potato chip was made by George Crumb. That's how I learned about, I guess, the phrasing of the home front, as far as people back home helping during World War II, as far as, rationing food and growing the gardens and everything like that. Like, you learn so much, even music history. That's how I discovered what Alvin Ailey was, because they used to talk about Alvin Ailey dance, as far as what that was. There were just so many things that they would always put in the ad, so you always saw something new, and it was kind of cool. So it would be kind of cool if they did that today with the kids, because I think that's why I probably hold on to so much, because I just remember all of that being a part of just my daily experience. That was always cool. And I think some of the other elements I really liked was that, I had so much access to my parents at that time, because my mother's job was maybe 5 blocks from my school. So sometimes if I didn't want to take the school bus home, I could just walk to my mom's job and hang out at her office. And I liked that the office next door was some kind of science lab. And so they had all of these animals, or like these, reptiles and stuff in the jars that they were dead, of course, but for research purposes. And so you could go look at the snake and the alligator and all that other stuff. And so my mom's office was literally right there, so that I could always go to her office, sit on her computer and play Minesweeper or Solitaire and everything like that. And then my father, because at first he started working at the commissary, because at this point my father was no longer in the military, so he was a civilian. And so I remember he worked at the commissary, he worked at Burger King, which was great because we got many discounts, and then he worked at a place called Self-Help, which was kind of like our own version of Home Depot, but just a much smaller version. Like, if you could turn Home Depot into a 7-Eleven, that's what Self-Help was. And the Self-Help store was in the neighborhood. So like during the summers, I remember some days I would just ride my bike to his job, and then I'd hang out with him because he worked in the warehouse. And he'd have me be his assistant, so I would help him move the wood from this side and do all these different things. And I thought it was cool. Really, he was working me to death, but I was in such happy land that I was working with my dad and doing adult things that I didn't even mind all the extra labor. The only thing I hated was having to move the cow manure bags, because people would always come and want to pick up manure to go and do the yard, because the neighborhood also had like a yard of the month competition, so everybody always wanted to have the nicest yard, so you'd have to help him with the cow manure. I hated doing that. Or if he ever had to like cut glass, there would be some kind of machine he would use, and he would just and the glass would just spread everywhere, and I'd be so scared, because I still remember from when the glass went in my leg with the trash bag from the previous episode, so I'd be nervous about that. And then the funniest part was, he had this intern that worked with him. It was some high schooler, and this was one of those mushroom weed head, the world is just a space, man. You just gotta live. He was one of those kind of people. And I thought he was the coolest person ever. And I remember he had this necklace with, well, he got sick. He had this necklace that had like liquid mercury in it. And one day he broke it on accident and was playing with it. And so he got some kind of illness and we never saw him again. But listen, those were some great memories. The one thing I didn't get a chance to do was talk about my experience playing all the different sports leagues, because I played pretty much every sport while I was there. But what I'll do is I will grandfather that into the 5th grade episode when I do the next episode on my experience in Italy, because the 5th grade year was the very last year and things did a dramatic turn. A lot was going on in the world, so it's a totally different experience than 4th grade. 4th grade, I think, was the peak of my innocence as a child, because I think by the time I got to 5th grade, I saw the world so differently. Long story short, the stuff with Yugoslavia and Kosovo was going on, and it directly affected us on the base. And so yeah, Italy was great at the time, and so my brother had gotten older and he was starting to get his own personality, and now I could actually play with him because he was coming out of that toddler stage and getting his own personality. You know, I had friends, school was going well, everything, it was just a good time. I think this, like I said, was the peak of my innocence, and so 4th grade was a great time. But anyway, I'm out. Until next time.